with Alan B. Smith. Rebroadcast on the Onyx Network. Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific. Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Mystic Lounge. I'm Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It has been quite a while, all the way through the holiday season, and I'm so happy to be here with you and with our special guest tonight, Cheryl Costa. If you are a fan of this podcast, please subscribe, comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly on tonight's topic, which is an interesting one indeed. Slight departure from where we usually go, but of course it's all related to the mystical and spirituality, paranormal, etc. And of course, click the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. This show is also rebroadcast on the Onyx Network, and you can go to the Onyx Network and check out so many other great shows, including a somewhat new edition, Meanwhile Here on Earth, by our friend Peter Robbins. I'm sure many of you know who he is. So if you haven't caught that update on the Onyx Network, go on over and check out Peter's show. He's one of the best ufologists out there. All right, so I want to bring our special guest on right at this moment. Cheryl, how are you?
Good. I'm doing great.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you here, of course. And tonight we're kind of doing, so last time you were on, we talked about your book, Magickal Musings of a Rogue Witch. This time we're kind of expanding on that, but more from a historical perspective on the evolution of spirituality, how it relates to women over the ages, how they were treated, things that happened to them, and why that may be we are the kind of, religious believing society that we are today because of that. So Cheryl, I'll leave the rest up to you if you can introduce the topic tonight.
Okay. I have to qualify something up front.
Please do.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to officially say I can't speak for all women.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't born woman or born a girl, and I wasn't raised as a young girl or a young woman. Okay. And I transitioned in my 30s and became the woman you see today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at best, the term I sometimes use for myself is I'm the proverbial counterfeit woman. Okay.
That's a phrase I've not heard before.
No, I'm one of the few people who use it. Okay. But I think the biggest point that I can make right now is to say, back in the 60s and early 70s, there was a couple of books of different people, several people who had special medicines given to them so they could darken their skin. And they wrote, the one guy wrote a book, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he wrote a book called Black Like Me.
Black Like Me. Yeah. I remember that in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here, and he ran in the Black community. Now, that gave him a perspective. Did he have a complete perspective of growing up Black? No, he didn't. And same as me. I did not have a complete perspective of growing up as a young woman. I was not socialized as a young woman.
Right.
Okay. But I did take the 40% pay cut. People act like I stuck a straw in the side of my head and took out 85% of my brain matter. They treat me like I'm clueless. There are a lot of things I'm not. For a long time after I changed, nobody took me seriously, even in my profession. Well, you did that silly sex change thing. How can we trust your engineering judgment? That kind of view. Okay. But a lot of the women felt the same way about the genuine girls. Okay.
Fair enough. Okay.
Okay. That's part of it. So people are probably saying, well, why are we talking about this since we normally talk about the spirituality and mysticism and stuff?
Right.
Well, let me put it this way. When I met my Lama for the first time, and he picked me out of a crowd of 150, 200 people and said, I know you. Okay. Later sat down with me and explained to me who I had been in a past life. And he looked at me and he says, my goodness, you have overcome something that many, 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 many mystics currently will not overcome. I says, what's that? He says, there's tens of thousands of monks in Asia that will not attain enlightenment in this lifetime because they refuse to connect with their feminine energy and their inborn feminine nature. The reality I'm going to tell you is, and your listeners, we are unity beings. We have all that potential in us, everything. But we have a culture on our world where we program people from the earliest age to say, well, you're a boy, boys don't cry, or girls do this, boys do that type of thing. Okay. This is the key thing to keep in mind as we go forward in this conversation. We are unity beings, but our society programs that out of us. Doesn't matter what our biology is. So I'm going to say a blasphemous thing right now. A Western sex change is a spiritual problem. The issue driving it is a spiritual problem.
Wait, okay. You're going to have to expand on that.
Okay. A person identifying as something other than the gender, the biology they've been born into.
Okay.
It's a spiritual problem. I got this from Native American folks. Okay. After I changed. And the deeper because there were questions that were not asked by going through the Western sex change process.
Sure. Well, and before you continue, let me just say this too. Many people who speak in terms of metaphysics and spirituality, they talk about dualism, dark and light, male, female energies. I mean, just talk about astrology and horoscopes. That's all over the place. And then also, we have XY chromosomes. We share chromosomes. I mean, I am almost identical to my sister, right? Like, there is that even in our biology, there are those male and female genetics that we all share with each other. So at the very nature of all this, spirituality is about finding balance. So go ahead.
That's the big point.
Right.
So a particular Native American man back in the early 90s, about a year or two after I changed, it was formally changed. Okay. It was most people try to get through it in a year or 18 months. I took 5 years because back in the 80s, everybody was telling me, you do this, you're going to be dead in the gutter. This was going to be my destruction. So I spent 5 years in therapy instead of the required 1 year. Okay. To get to the bottom of it all. Okay. Point one. So the first thing this native medicine guy did, we're having a private consultation. And he looks at me and said, so you took a white man's solution to a spiritual problem.
Interesting. All right.
Okay. And so that put me on a journey of asking other questions and digging deeper and trying to understand things.
Right. And that's what we do here. Yeah.
And there you go.
Yep.
So, okay. So think about this for a minute. When we advertised the show a little bit about the War of the Sexes, 51% of the world's population are considered an inferior birth by most of by the majority of religions,
especially if you go back archaically.
Yes. But you can go into a mosque now. The women are back there in a different room, the different side of it. Okay,
it's still happening, right?
It's still that way. It really is. And this is where, and hell, Catholic Church, they won't allow women to be clergy.
Yeah. I wish that
would change. It's always been a brotherhood, Well, the thing is, if the Catholic Church truly wants to have a renaissance, they start ordaining women, they would have a massive renaissance.
Oh, and they would increase their numbers, I would assume.
Amazingly.
Yeah.
Okay, amazingly. Why are so many people in the pagan faith? Because women can be priestesses.
That's a good observation. Yeah.
I was supposed to be a seminarian.
Well, because we all want community to some degree, right? And a lot of us, our spiritual pursuits, are part of that communal experience.
When I was in high school, or actually when I was in Catholic school, okay, Everybody thought I was going to be, I was one of the, in first grade, everybody wanted to be a priest or nun, that type of thing.
Yeah.
When you get to high school, it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people in both genders. Okay. And my first communion partner just celebrated her 30-year jubilee as a Catholic nun. Okay. And she's a pretty powerful one. She's big in the accounting thing. And heck, they called her over to Vatican a couple of times for consulting, that type of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody thought I was going to be the priest. Okay. In high school, and I can tell you the exact date, it was April 17th, 1970. It was the day the Apollo 13 astronauts came back to Earth. Okay. I'm helping out at the rectory. I'd been helping the young priest wash the cars, that type of thing. I had access to these guys. As soon as I graduated from high school, I was going to spend the summer at a monastery up in the Finger Lakes, and I was going to seminary in the fall, essentially college. Okay. They did a side story about some starving children in Africa as a side story away from the guys getting back safely from Apollo 13. I started crying. I was always I was in the title of the first chapter of my biography is The Boy Who Cried. Okay. My parents wouldn't let me go to the movies after a certain period of time because if we were watching the dog kid horse movie, so to speak, the dog died, the horse got sick, whatever. I was sitting there crying with the little girls and my parents got embarrassed about it. Boys don't cry. Okay. So they wouldn't let me go to the movies anymore as a kid. I wasn't allowed to go to the movies because I was an embarrassment to them. Okay. So when I started going on this idea of going into the priesthood, on a good track, I was going. And we were watching this program. I started crying at seeing these skeletons with skin, and type of thing. And the pastor with liquor on his breath looked at me and said, if you're going to be a priest, you're going to have to be stronger than that. And I just tried to roll with it, not to make any waves. And he wouldn't let it go. We got into a knockdown, drag out argument. And they pulled my sponsorship the next day.
Ouch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Figuring my life was over, I went out and joined the Air Force. And as soon as I graduated from high school, they shipped me off to boot camp. Okay. So you get the idea. Okay. So here's the deal. People say, well, you got to make a man out of yourself. I'm just sharing this for some prospective trans women individuals out there. Got to make a man out of yourself. So I joined a service that was supposed to make a man out of me. And that wasn't doing a good enough job. I was a squirrely little kid. And I volunteered for Vietnam. Who volunteers to go to a war? Okay. I volunteered for Vietnam. I'm going to make a man out of myself or die trying. All I managed to go ahead.
Well, you literally went to reassignment boot camp, right? like they have those camps now where they send people, or where they try to send people away. Conversion, not reassignment, conversion.
Well, in this camp,
and that was your own way. You were voluntarily trying to be manly,
become a man, or get or die trying. Right. That was my attitude. I came back a decorated war hero with a good case of PTSD and exposure to Agent Orange. Okay, which is taking me apart now. Okay. That's why I retired from the UFO speaking circuit. I'm just not healthy enough to go. So,
well, you can still do podcasts, I hope.
I told people I can do all the podcasts you want,
okay,
but good. I am not, I can't go into the irregular schedules of flying and the oddball meals and all that. VA diagnosed me with the issues related to Agent Orange, 50-year-old case of PTSD as well. So all that stuff. But that's what haunts me from my Vietnam era. Okay. Combat soldier. Okay. And the bottom line is, I'll give an example. Okay. My father died in 2010, even up to about 4 months before he passed away. one night I was having dinner at his house, at my mother and father's house. And my father said, pounded on the table at the end of dinner. And he said, your shrink should have made you grow a beard and chase girls. I said, Dad, I hid behind a Paul Bunyan style beard all the time I was in the Navy, for God's sakes. And as far as chasing girls, I was good with that, so I still am, So,
You got a good one too.
Yeah, and I got a good one too,
Well,
So
it's interesting earlier, because you said it's about the spiritual problem.
yeah,
That's what other people would say that don't support, the transgender people, right? They say, well, that's why you're transgender, because you have a spiritual problem. Why don't you come to God, come to our
you
church,
gotta
and
come to
we'll
Jesus.
fix you.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Mhm.
here's the problem. That's the other problem. You try and tell other trans people that this is a spiritual problem, and they say, "Oh, you're going to tell me I'm going to hell." I said, "No, I'm not.
Right.
I'm trying to tell you what you're about." But they most of the time they won't listen to me. Okay. So I gave up trying. Okay. But the bottom line is it's a spiritual issue. Okay. We are unity beings, and how we express ourselves and what comes out of us just is what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. And the problem is not us individuals. These kids coming out now with the non-binaries. Oh God, I cheered them on. The souls that are in those bodies have said enough of this stuff.
Right.
I
Well,
am what I
let's not
am.
go into like that, like in the sex side of that, because that's a very complicated issue. So
Sex and gender, though. Okay.
yeah, like all that
There's
stuff.
gender identity and sexual identity.
Yeah,
But the
exactly.
bottom line is we have a spiritual apotheosis going on. I
Right.
mean, an upwelling of enlightenment. And most of the world's religions, because of their rigid dogma,
Mm-hmm.
can't see this miracle that is happening right before for them, and they're criticizing it and condemning it and passing laws against it,
Yeah.
all this kind of thing, and they have no idea the miracle that is blossoming in front of them.
Well, in the paranormal community and UFO community, people talk about, star children and indigo children and these sort of ideas of the sort of evolution of a species. And so I figure like, well, if you can accept that, why can't you accept that there's
Thank you.
different people here evolving in different ways? Why not?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly that. So I went on after that native medicine guy talked to me in the early 90s.
Mhm.
I sort of went on in the court. I'm a high priestess, but I went on a private study of this whole topic, trying to explore it from a spiritual standpoint,
Mhm.
a deep spiritual. And we're not talking spiritual like religion standpoint, but from that greater view, mystical enlightenment view. Okay. And the bottom line that I found was the fact that we are this unity being. Okay. And this is strictly biology. In fact, I had an argument with some Buddhist monks when I lived in a monastery. Okay. They were debating this thing. Of course, they called me in and with a buzz cut, they thought I was just one of the boys. Okay. Even though I was an ordained Buddhist nun, and they sucked me into this monastic debate. And they're telling me all this stuff. And they said, okay, great. And finally they looked at me and they said, okay, your turn. What do we have to do to make Buddhism uniquely North American? And I said, well, we need to lose the Asian baggage first. And they all twitched and everything. And they said, like what? I said, well, first thing, you're not treating women like you're treating women like a bunch of property.
Mhm.
Buddhist monks are called bhikshus, and the nuns are called bhikshunis.
Okay.
Okay. And the easy way to remember that is bhikshu sounds like big shoe, so that's the guys. Okay. Bigger
Gotcha.
shoe. All right. So we're in this debate and we're talking. And I said, first thing we got to do is we got to start making the women equal. Well, the 7th century scriptures say, and I said, no, let's go back to Buddha. Let's go back to 2,600 years.
Mhm.
Buddha ordained men and women equally. Yeah, but they have, 100 additional vows they have to take. I said, they have reproductive apparatus in their bodies. They have a bigger responsibility, was my
Right.
argument.
It was different. Well, so my understanding too of Buddha was that, he did say, yes, men and women can both reach enlightenment, but maybe I'm wrong. But my understanding of one of the translations is that he was like, but it's harder for women. Have you heard that before?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think he means by that? Is that related to what you were just saying?
Yes and no. Okay. It's harder for women because of, well, I'll give you an example. In a women's monastery,
Mhm.
a lot of women get ordained, but sooner or later, that instinct to breed and to have a family and all that stuff kind of kicks in, and it distracts them from it, and eventually a lot of nuns leave the practice and their
I see.
vows.
Okay.
Okay, there's that. The other thing is it's harder for them because men crap on them. Okay, and they have this miserable life.
Yeah, I guess if you were in a patriarchal society, then of course it's going to be hard for you to put the time in to reach enlightenment and do and feel
Well,
good about
it's
yourself. I
about
get
quieting your mind and
quieting the
quieting your
mind.
heart.
Right.
And if you can't do that because you've got this miserable existence, your husband beats you, and all this kind of stuff, it's harder.
Mhm.
Okay. I'll give you another quick example. Male monasteries, we'll say, like in India. Okay. Male monasteries get all kinds of money thrown at them. The women's monasteries are impoverished. Okay. And so it's just a fact of life. That's the problem with this. 51% of the population is considered lesser by most of the world's religions.
So lack of donations.
Inferior. They're also
Inferior.
considered inferior. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's the issue. Now, when did all this happen? Back about 5,000 years ago. We're going to say about the first or second century BC. Okay.
Mhm.
There was sort of like this patriarchal monotheistic, back when everybody had gods. We had the Greek gods, we had the Egyptian gods. I'm an Egyptian priestess. Hey, we have 1,503 gods. Okay, with principles about 100, and then there's a god for just about everything you can think of.
Mhm.
Okay, back in ancient Egypt, before the Jews left Egypt, the Jews had their own temples, and they worshipped Yahweh and his consort, his female consort,
Mhm.
Asherah. Okay, I'm going to do it like that. I know it looks like Mr. Spock, but that's the Jewish symbol for Asherah.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay. In fact, that's where Nimoy got it from. Okay.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do forget about that part of the history
It's
of
by
Judah.
design. It's by design. Um, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mhm.
Okay. A feminine presence comes out of the ark. That's Asherah.
Mhm.
Okay? She certainly didn't have a great attitude either, did she? Okay.
No, yeah, no one said she did. You just said that she was there.
Yeah. Okay. Now there is also, if you look, this has always puzzled me with symbology. You had the Father,
Mhm.
Son, and the Holy Ghost. Okay. That bird
Right.
symbol for the Holy Ghost
Mhm.
is a classic symbol for goddesses.
Mhm.
Goddesses were considered the goddesses, sky goddess. So
Right.
when I did my talk at the Unitarian Church back in not November, October 22nd,
Mhm.
I'm up there in my black clergy dress with my stole on, but
Mhm.
I've got rainbow stockings on, and people ask me why the rainbow stockings. I said, "Hey, I work for a sky goddess."
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, that was traditional garb. Doesn't matter if it was Buddhist bikinis, Indian bikinis, um, traditional goddesses.
Right.
Okay. They had rainbow in their clothing
As a symbol. Sure.
as a symbol. Okay.
Mhm.
So the Jews leave Egypt. And during the 40 years of wandering around in the desert, Moses goes up on a hill, comes back 40 days later, and he's got some stone tablets with writing on them. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
whether Moses did it himself or whether God did it, who knows? But there will be no other gods before me was that first commandment.
Mhm.
Okay, so what happened there during Exodus? They started destroying. Oh, you see this in the movie, The Ten Commandments. They're destroying the pagan idols and things, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the women were worshiping Asherah. Okay. So
Mhm.
suddenly they no longer had a face of God for their veneration, and a male god didn't cut it, as far as they were concerned, when you think about it. And all those shrines were destroyed. Well,
So
go ahead.
let me just pause it there for a moment. Are we to understand that women tended to worship Asherah more and men, what was it, Baal, or what was the other god?
Yahweh.
Yahweh. Okay, right. Baal's the horned god. That's separate. Okay,
He's more Mesopotamian.
Mesopotamian, yeah. So were they kind of worshiping separately, these two gods, or how did that work?
Well, in Egypt, there was all kinds of gods and goddesses.
But was it predominantly women?
I'm a priestess of Aset, or Isis, as the Greek translation is. I'm a priestess of Aset. Okay.
So you gravitated to whatever god those two.
People venerated different goddesses.
Right.
Okay. So here we are. Okay. So one of those early laws in the Jewish Bible, written from Exodus, do not suffer a sorceress to live. That's basically targeted at the women because they are still embracing magic and they're still embracing a female face of God. Move ahead up to the Middle Ages. They quote that constantly. The Inquisitions did. Okay. And what was the biggest problem with the Christianization of Europe during the Middle Ages? Was the indigenous population of women were still venerating female faces of goddess.
Okay, so I'm seeing the
tradition was.
I'm seeing a pattern, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is what we were up against. The women were up against it. And there's a book out there called the oh God, I'm going to drop the name now. I'll remember it for the end of the show. But it's a wonderful book written by a friend of mine by the name of Serenity Young. She's a professor up at CUNY, up in New York. And she wrote a book about goddesses. Oh, the women who fly. That's the name of the book. Women Who Fly, by Serenity Young. I strongly recommend the book. Okay, she paints a case in there of the fall of the goddesses. You started seeing it suddenly in the Greek tradition, started talking about the goddesses coming to earth and getting married to an earthly man and losing their powers, this type of thing. You see it with the German things. Broomhilda fell from the sky and got married, had children, and could no longer do the Valkyrie stuff anymore. This is what we're talking. They literally changed the status of women by writing it into their mythologies. The storytellers did, who were men. Okay. So this is how the women fell from stature. So
it's like saying the victors write history, right? The victors write the history.
Exactly.
So whoever is predominant writes the history through their eyes and how they want people to see it. Okay.
Exactly. So I had somebody a long time ago say to me, he says, well, you pagan women, you've got all these goddesses, but we've got Mary. I said, yeah, but she doesn't have deity status as far as you're concerned.
Yeah, she definitely doesn't. And she wasn't even the one who performed the miracle. It was, performed upon her.
Yes.
And then a quick question regarding that. So Charles Smarr asks in YouTube chat, so when you're looking at Jesus and Yahweh, where does the feminine masculine lie there?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
But if you're Catholic, the Holy Spirit should be.
Yeah, but they don't talk about it in a feminine sense.
I see. Okay.
They don't. Okay. Now let's qualify something. There's a wonderful. Everybody who's Catholic knows a picture of the Virgin Mary standing there holding her son Jesus, little baby Jesus, right? That is an early Roman copy of a similar painting made during Roman Egyptian times, okay, of Isis holding her son Horus. Remember, the early Christian tradition was cobbling together its traditions, and they stole a little bit here, a little bit there, that type of thing. That's where this is coming from.
So it was essentially modeled off of a pagan icon.
Yes.
Okay. Imagery. Got
it. And the thing most people don't understand, I've had people say to me, well, Isis, she's the myth. I said, she was the predominant religion in the Mediterranean,
Mhm.
for thousands of years. Okay. I didn't even understand how I got my connection to her. In 1990, one day I was doing a circle for a public demonstration circle. We were doing, a bunch of us were priestesses were doing educational circles,
Mhm.
and I went to go make my offering, and I invoked Isis. I'm going, what is going on here? And I had to do some research. I could not figure it out. And then I got my DNA done. I've got Berber genes. My father told me his side of the family descends from Portuguese and Moorish pirates, hence the Berber genes.
I would definitely say you have a pirate spirit.
Oh, yeah, well, that too. Yeah, I've been told that many times. In fact, when I got married to Linda, my wife,
Mhm.
I was taken to the altar, and I was barefoot as pirate princesses were taken to the altar.
Mm.
And I went there barefoot with the lady who gave me away. Okay. So, okay, back to your questions. Go ahead. We're on a
Well,
roll here. I showed you where the goddesses fell from
yeah. So
grace.
let's pick that up. So where we started with like 1 BC, and then moving forward, let's move a little bit closer to like the Middle Ages. How did it evolve? Like once we got rid of
Okay.
the Holy Spirit,
Oh
right?
no, the Holy Spirit. Well,
As a
it's
as a
still there. Yeah,
feminine
right. We're not telling
entity,
people about it. Yes.
right?
So the biggest problem we're dealing with is how do I want to say this? Uh, the Christianization of Europe was the problem. We can't have free thinking women. We have to breed them for timidity. And the ones that won't cooperate will burn. They're witches. They're heretics. That's the thing. And for 200, almost 300 years, that's what they did. Christianity was spread across Europe at the point of a sword and later at the point of the muzzle of a gun.
Yeah.
Pagan faiths were very organic. Certain gods appeal to us and resonate with us, and we connect. And people say, well, I'm a God-fearing man, or God-fearing whoever, and pagans, we look at them and say, we don't have that. We have an adult child parent relationship with our gods. That's the difference.
It's not a bowing down to it, like a
Reverence
submissive
and respect,
role.
yes, but certainly not bowing down on our feet shivering.
Right. Okay.
Isis has never, Set, I should probably use her proper Egyptian name, Set has never asked that of me. And when I showed you my badge, notice there's there's her little symbol up there.
It's official.
It's official, believe me, very official. I happen to be the archpriestess of the Society of Set, but just a detail.
Yeah. One of many details.
One of many details. But the whole big thing is that it comes down to, let me say it this way. You see all these abortion laws being passed by the GOP, okay? Anti-abortion laws, right? Beings that do not have control of the reproduction are cattle, are livestock. And womankind has been livestock for a long time. Breeding stock.
Well, if you think about the ages that women were married
Sold
off,
off.
it's like they're sold off at like 13, 12,
Yes.
14. Like now we can't even imagine that. And yet that was the norm because it was about breeding more than anything else.
Yes. Certain bloodlines, particularly selling off a princess to keep peace between two countries, that type of thing,
Yeah.
Do your duty, that type of thing. So this is all part of this. So when it comes into the spirituality side of this whole thing, women's spirituality is very different to some degree. Okay. Okay. Here's a line from my autobiography. Excuse me. Bring back the matriarchy. The patriarchy has given us nothing more than pollution and lots of wars. War after bloody war.
Well, what if
women build communities?
Yeah, but can we do that without using a title such as matriarchy or patriarchy? Can we just be a balanced society? where women
Ideally, yes.
are yeah,
Ideally,
yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
Do you think there's a balancing out that has to take place at first, like the swinging of the pendulum sort of
Yeah.
effect?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It comes down to that. I've seen certain women from we'll say like come from the Middle East walking 6 pages behind their husbands. Okay.
Mhm.
They're as much responsible for the raising of their little boys
Oh,
as anybody.
oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. So now, have you heard of a TV series called The Power?
Nope.
Most people haven't. It was a #1 hit on Amazon, and it was the hardest thing to find. Not on Amazon, on Netflix. It was the hardest thing to find. They buried it because in the story of The Power, women started developing this like electricity, and they could literally electrocute a man.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the end of the first season, and they're making
Like
a
like an
second season.
evolutionary trait or something because
Yes.
men are
Yes.
physically bigger and stronger mostly.
And if the
Right.
hermaphrodite, the natural hermaphrodites,
Mhm.
um, they are physically mixed.
Mhm.
Some of them develop this power as well.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And it, like I said, you didn't see anybody writing up rave reviews. It was a best kept secret on Netflix this past summer.
You're gonna have to look this up.
It's called The Power.
The Power. Okay.
Okay. And it's based on a book. And it's really, really, really quite interesting. And all the women I've talked to who have seen it, say, go get him, girls, fry his ass, that kind of thing.
Genghis Khan in chat says, "Oh
Sure.
yeah, I started that series. Let us know how it goes, Genghis. I'm definitely going to check it out."
It's wonderful.
But the interesting thing about this period and all periods up until modern time is that there were these kind of exceptions. So, like, I don't know why and I'm not a big believer necessarily in reincarnation, but I wonder, was I around this person in that period, and that's why I have a fascination. But I have a particular fascination with Hildegard von Bingen. Um,
Okay.
she this was like around 1100. She was a polymath, and instead of being married off, what happened to women back then is like they would be given to the church with a dowry, essentially. But the dowry was actually protected. So the woman going into the church, typically a young girl, teenager, to be a nun or whatever the term was at the time, um, they would actually have some say in how their money could be used. So she was a genius polymath. She painted, she wrote hymns and songs, some of the most beautiful from the Dark Ages. And she was a mathematician, brilliant, but she was also a brilliant politician too. And she could really work the system and make deals. And there was one time where people were so upset with uh, her sect or I forget what it's called, but where they all lived together. The
Community.
community. Yeah, there's a name for it, but it'll come back to me. And she went directly to like the bishop and was like, "Look, you can make these changes, and I'm going to leave with my dowry." And they said, "Okay, fine. You can stay." And there were women who were smart and powerful and figured out ways to make a way for themselves. But in reality, that was the exception
Agreed.
to the rule.
Agreed.
Yeah. Mhm.
Now I have people in this lifetime. Okay, one of the things I developed during the course of the 7 years I was actually in serious monastery. I'm okay. There's two traditions in Tibetan Orthodox tradition.
Mhm.
Um, Pedman Savava came there 1,200 years ago and taught the shamans Buddhist technology. It's not really a religion; it's more of a technology, philosophy type of thing. But not everybody thinks it's a religion.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Okay. He taught it to the shamans and they took it forth. Now,
Mhm.
so in Orthodox, there's four great traditions of Buddhism in Tibet. Three of them have monks and nuns and have lay people. The Orthodox tradition has monks and nuns. That's called the Sutra tradition. And then they also have Tantric tradition, which is what they call the yoginis. And I'm an ordained yogini. In fact, I was given that ordination before I became a nun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so in the course of which I worked on trying to touch other times in my previous lives. Okay. And I made a lot of connections, about 50, 60 of them over the period of since the 90s, late 90s, probably about 50, 60 of them. I was being interviewed in early 2011 with a small monastery, women-run monastery up in Vancouver, British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. Okay. And the senior nun needed somebody who was office savvy. And I was a senior staffer at Lockheed. So I took a week and flew up there and spent a week with her. Her and her congregation loved me. They wanted me to come and stay there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One day, the two of us were she took me to a museum, Northwest Museum type of thing. And we were there. And during part of the thing, we saw these little figurines from Japan. And a couple of them were geishas.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, I said, Leah, I believe I was a geisha at one time. And she looked at me point blank, and she's got 10, 15 years on me. And she says, yeah, we were in an obi in Yokosuka. And this was what your name was. And she told me.
Wow.
Now I understand why, while all my friends are running around getting tattoos, why I don't. Okay. Principal reason was some of the military work I do, it was kind of frowned on. Okay.
Okay.
But me personally, when I was out from underneath those restrictions, I was tattooed significantly in that lifetime, and it bloody hurts.
Mm.
Okay.
Well, especially how it was done back.
Yeah.
In the day. Right. Yeah. I have one tattoo that I got when I was 40 years old as a gift to myself. And, it stung, but I'm sure it's nothing like what you guys has, right?
Let me give you a flavor
had to go through.
Did you hear the announcement in the news this past week? China has come out and told its women, have more babies.
That's crazy. Well, they did it to themselves.
They did it to themselves.
Sure did.
But Japan has a similar problem. Women just decided, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids.
Yeah. Well, that's happening here too.
It's been happening here too. This is, again, we don't like use patriarchy or matriarchy, but this is a subliminal pushback from the matriarchy.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So yeah, there's almost a collective unconsciousness movement in a way.
You think?
Wow, you should be. Are you a social psychologist as well?
No, I'm not. But I'm married to one.
Okay. Well, there you go. There you go.
She's got a degree in psychology. So
that's interesting because we always wonder, right? We always wonder why certain trends and things happen the way they are, and sometimes I do think that there is that sort of unconscious collective consciousness that shifts, us in directions where we need to go for whatever reason. No one's telling us to do it. It just sort of happens organically.
I've got a witchcraft class I'm teaching right now.
Mm-hmm.
We started out with 50, 60 people. We're down to about 27, which is about what I would expect after about 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
People either think, well, this isn't for me, or no, this is too hard, whatever. There's a whole laundry list of reasons why they drop out. So we're getting down to the meat of the people who are still in the class, which is what I really like. We've got the people who've got the staying power. And one of the things that came up, and guess what? I just had that 71 moment here, and I just drew a complete blank.
But that's okay. I'm going to insert this really quick.
Good.
So Genghis Khan said, my grandma from Singapore was supposed to have an arranged marriage. However, she was already in love and ran off with her choice and basically cut ties to her parents to do so.
My family's dead to me.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that was a very hard thing to deal with. And I spent a lot of time on a therapist couch working through it. And finally,
and all it takes is love, man. But some people, the society has trained them in a certain way, or in my own personal experience, narcissists. That's a much I don't know if that's genetic, what makes a narcissist a true narcissist, but it's like nothing you can do about it. And they can't get to that place of acceptance and love, and you just have to let go somehow. It's not that easy though. I could tell you.
And
Tell you
they don't,
Yep.
some people just are unwilling to examine it and discuss. Okay.
True. Right.
There are certain families, my mother's side of the family is all Irish and
Mhm.
Northern Irish to boot, boy, that went over like crap when I was in Catholic school, because on St. Patrick's Day, Mom sent me to school with the orange shirt versus
Mm.
the green shirt because we were North Irish. Oh, that didn't go over well. But the point is
Yeah.
that there's some rigidity in society. It won't
Yes.
let go of certain things and at least entertain a variant or a different approach to it. And it's either right or it's wrong. And that's the
Look, I
problem.
mean, a good example is, certain religions have had to adapt because they would crumble because the collective society is moving in a direction, and if they don't accept that, they will die. And human evolution, which includes us as a collective, is about evolution and adaptation. That's how we survive as a species.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah.
If you told me 10 years ago,
Hmm.
I would, even as a priestess, I would do hand fastings, which is like a ceremonial wedding, but I didn't have any authority under the state to solemnize their marriage. Okay. If you had told me that I would be now licensed by the state of Ohio to marry people because I'm the pagan chaplain at this UU church,
Right.
I would have wanted a case of whatever you were drinking.
Right.
Because I did not foresee that happening.
Oh, Cheryl, you froze. Are you still there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me? Are you there? Not me. Not me. It's not me.
Okay, I think we're back.
Yeah, I think it froze on your end.
Yeah, both of us froze. Not
Okay.
sure what happened there.
Well,
Everybody,
we
thank
do
you
have a lot
for.
of sunspot activity going on right now, and it does affect satellites. So,
We did, and we don't live in the New York City center anymore, so connections aren't always as strong as
oh,
they
you're in
as
the
they used to
burbs.
be.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no, we're further than the burbs.
Okay.
We're even further out. Yeah,
Okay.
we're surrounded
All
by
right.
lots of green. It's beautiful though.
We're in the last 10 minutes, so cut the chase on whatever you
Yeah,
want to
let's do
ask
it.
me.
Mhm.
I think the bottom line on it is that the faiths that have opened up and allowed women to become clergy. Okay. Again, if you had told me a year ago
Mhm.
that I would be giving a sermon in a mainstream church wearing my witch hat,
I wouldn't have believed it growing up.
no, I wouldn't have either.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the way things are going.
Mhm.
They're some faiths are embracing people,
Right.
other people.
And so where does the balance in all this come into play? What going back and the witch hunts and all that sort of thing, kind of suppressing what were predominantly localized, like more pagan animistic belief systems by women. They were forced to no longer enact in even just herbology, right? Like
Mhm.
herbology was considered like a witchcraft or something like that. So
Yeah.
all these skills, all
Until
this
men read this, later medieval century men
yeah.
discovered it, and that became medicine. Wow,
Well, okay, so like a lot of that knowledge was lost, and that's what I wonder. Like, what do you think? What did we lose? I mean, yes, now like you go on Instagram and there's a million metaphysical accounts and pagan accounts and people, you know, uh, with their apothecaries and their spells and things that they share, and I think it's so cool. because that was lost for a long time. What do you think we lost that we can never get back, though?
We've had a renaissance, at least from the pagan view standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, started with Gerald Gardner back in the 50s when they took certain laws off the books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it was the Wicca tradition that he propagated back in the 50s was sort of a subculture at that time. But when it got into the 60s and 70s, with the growth of the women's movement looking for a non-patriarchal based view of deity, hence it blossomed. And by the 80s, things were really rolling. You had people like Starhawk and Margot Adler putting out really substantive books, that type of thing. So that's where the blossoming, they took the law and the sting and the risk of being thrown in jail for being a witch off the books. Because that's what was enacted during medieval times, during Inquisition times, that type of thing. They took these laws. Now, I'll give you a quick example, though. Even though a lot of the books were throttled down in the 18th century, they stopped doing witch trials, that type of thing. A lot of the books laws stayed on the books. So in England, during World War II, there was a medium over there that was making very accurate predictions about stuff that wasn't being publicly told to the public by the defense ministry.
Mm-hmm.
So the intelligence officials became concerned that if she blabbed about D-Day, the cat would be out of the bag. So they used a still active piece of the 1735 Witchcraft Act to throw her into solitary confinement until after D-Day.
Right.
Okay. And
rather than reaching out to her like we did later in the 60s,
yes,
and say, hey, can you help us?
Okay, let's go a step further. In 1991, one of my students, she was a clergy student. She was going through training, and she was in the middle of a divorce. Her husband's lawyer and him were making no progress in divorce court. So finally, they come in and they threw out the witch card. Of course, the judge laughed them out of court.
Yeah.
Okay, but because of that, it got on the books. I'm in court records, being her high priestess. Okay. All right. About a year later, this guy from ABC, the 2-hour movies, movie of the week kind of guy, reaches out to me. He says, hey, could you introduce me to a lady who had that problem with husband who tried to use the old witchcraft laws, that type of thing, to try and turn the divorce in his favor? And I just looked at the guy and says, come to dinner Friday night. I'll introduce you to a dozen of them. And they came, he came, and they burned his ears off, with their stories. So even in 1990, 1991 timeframe, this was still an issue.
Yeah. And obviously there's pockets that's still an issue today. That's why we're having these conversations.
Yes.
Because there's overall spirituality, metaphysics, but then we're all different individuals. We all experience life through a slightly different lens, and so I think it's healthy to have those discussions, about whether it's about life after death or life here and now. How can we look back and see what made us believe what we believe? And I really appreciate tonight's discussion, Cheryl. So we've got a couple minutes left. If you can leave us with a final thought, anything, what would it be?
Well, okay, everybody says there's one God. Okay, but 3 guys in one, but one God. All right, fine. Okay, I represented a particular county on the county ministerial association. I came in black clergy shirt with a green collar, like a priest. Okay, but green. And they started asking me questions. Well, do you people have a God? And I said, hey, we've got gods by the bushel. Okay.
Yeah, plenty. We're not short. Don't worry about us.
And they said, what do you mean? I said, hey, the Greeks had 3,100, the Egyptians 1,500. You talk to my Hindu friends, and there was Hindu priests right across from me in the table at this meeting. And I said, they got 33 million. And he said, yeah. So the deal is there are advanced beings out there that probably a long time ago were human, but they evolved spiritually to a deific state.
Okay.
Okay. So my argument to my tank got done with that conversation. Don't worry, there's plenty of faces of God for everybody.
Right. Well, hey, there's tens of thousands of years, if not hundreds or millions of years of human or human-like thinking beings before the written 6,000 years ago traditions that we have.
Agreed.
So, I mean, who knows what could have happened back then, right?
The deal is, I tell everybody, just open your heart, and if somebody sings to you, and invites you to come talk to them, don't let them in. Don't invite anybody into yourself. But if you think on it, particularly if you come from a certain heritage or something like this, go to the library, not online. Don't go online. Go to a paper library and research the history of the lineages that you have in your DNA. You may find you're connected to a particular pantheon of deities. Okay.
Cheryl, what do you think about us possibly living in not like a computer as we understand it, but a sort of kind of simulation?
Oh,
reality?
You mean like sim life, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like a Matrix life.
Ooh, that's scary. And what's funny is it feels that way. But if you talk to the UFO people and some of the remote viewing people, they say our planet is a prison planet. And the way they keep us confined here is by force. Every time our physical body dies, they keep forcing our soul back into another physical body. And that's what keeps us contained here.
So that would create, well, that would be a sort of Matrix then. A constructed reality.
Yes. But if you look at it from like a Buddhist view, okay, I tell people, says, hey, this body's wearing out like an old car. I'm going to get a new one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be reborn again. I'll come back. Okay. And I'm of a certain level of spiritual enlightenment that I'm going to remember not so much who this person was, but I'll remember the knowledge that was acquired. Okay. Because once the Lama introduced me to some of this stuff, and I started doing it, I made a set of robes. He looked at, when he saw the robes, he said, you made those by yourself? No pattern? I said, yeah. He says, how'd you know how to make a 19th century cut? Okay. The knowledge was there.
Interesting.
And so if you think about it, we're connected to our past. If you're willing to turn the phone off, turn off the football game, and do some quiet time, do some quiet meditation, clear your consciousness, become quiet in your mind, be alone with your thoughts. You'd be surprised what information bubbles up within you.
It's so true. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I love our conversation as always. For everybody listening, her most popular book right now is Magickal Musings of a Rogue Witch. That's it right there on screen. Go check it out. It's on Amazon. Self-published, Cheryl?
Yes. Number one seller in 2023 against 50, 60 UFO books. That was the number one seller. Who knew?
It always comes back to UFOs anyway. So
yeah.
All right, Cheryl, thank you so much. I'm really happy to have you on. Please send Linda, my wife and I's, fondness and love to you both.
Bye-bye now.
Okay, good night. And thank you everybody for joining us. Really appreciate you. And if you want to catch this show on the replay, most of the Mystic Lounge shows are replayed at 2 a.m. on Fridays, Eastern Standard Time, Pacific Time, and 11 p.m. Thursdays on Eastern Time. And if you want to support the channel, I'd really appreciate that. You can click the like button, comment, share your thoughts down below, and click the subscribe button. All that helps the algorithm. We're little by little growing. I appreciate it, and it's all because of you. So thank you so much. Until next time, peace and love, everyone, and live in the mystery.